All right, Matthew, welcome to episode 20 of the Performance Advantage podcast. Hard to believe we've made it this far. And this week, ultra endurance is going to be the topic we're talking about. Matt, you're a avid 24-hour racer. This should be a topic close to your heart. I'm considering you the expert here because I've only sort of raced just over 10 hours.
Okay. Yeah, 10 hours is small, man. Yeah, I've done a lot of these events, but I would not consider myself an expert. But I would say that I've definitely made pretty much every mistake possible in
cool.
like a 24-hour
What
mountain
we
bike
want to
race.
hear. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while though. I must say it's been a while. I think the last one that I did, at least for a 24-hour race, would have been like 2006.
Oh, yeah. Wow. That is quite a long time
Yeah,
ago.
that's a long time ago. You know, we were on 26-inch wheels and bar ends, So
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a different world for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So when we're talking ultra endurance, actually, Matt, what have you been up to?
Yeah, what have I been up to? Yeah, well, we talked last week that I was doing a bit of running. So I am doing a bit of running. A little bit.
Yeah.
Because it takes me a long time to build back into it because I, won't run for 6 months and I don't have much of a, I'm just not suited for running. My bones aren't up for it yet. So it takes me a while. So yeah, I've been doing a bit of that and I've been super pumped to like get back on the mountain bike trails here in New Zealand. They're really wet, but yeah, it was just really good. And we did a ride and we did some line comparison and did some videos, put those up on Instagram. And that was pretty cool. Like had people choosing on my Instagram story, which line's faster. And that was super cool.
Yeah.
And did some hikes on the weekend. And other than that, I have some new sensors coming that I am not going to talk about just yet. And really excited about those. And also about to launch my new website.
Whoa.
Yep. Smart MTB training. So I've been putting some teasers out there with my new logo. And, the website's almost ready to go. And it's going to, revolutionize mountain bike training.
It's pretty exciting, Matthew, I have to say. I've seen it, been a part of it, and can't wait to up my MTB skills and training with that thing.
Well, the inspiration for Smart MTB training was your own website.
The Endurance Training Hub.
The Endurance Training Hub, which, you signed me up for that a long time ago. Just, like, hey, Matt, what do you think about this? I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. And the more I heard you talking about it and like what it can offer athletes, the more I was like, you know what, I need to go all in and make this for mountain bikers. So it's on the way.
Yeah, and Matt and I talked about it last night. We're like, man, we've got to mention our offerings and services, because if we actually had sponsors on this podcast, we'd probably be pretty atrocious at promoting them.
But the whole reason we started this podcast is because we want, there's a gap in knowledge and we want to be able to share that knowledge with athletes.
Yeah.
But then we also have these our jobs, and our jobs tailor to what we talk about. And, we never actually talk about them that much. So,
yeah. Oh, it sounds like you've been doing a bit. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, doing a bit. How about you?
Yeah. Oh, I did a first aid course. That was got to tick those boxes, for the insurance.
Yeah, that's right.
That was pretty standard kind of stuff. And I did a half marathon in the weekend. Half marathon. Yeah. That was so much fun. It was awesome. I went in there with no expectations. I just wanted to stay relaxed and enjoy it, which is super important on the trails, as you know, as being a mountain biker. And just was able to thrash myself a bit, and beautiful trails in Taupo. Really blessed, I think, with our location in New Zealand. Just the endless amount of trails we have available. first year this event was run, and it was massive. Like trail running and running in general, I think it's just taken a huge boom. It's ridiculous. It's just massive.
Kind of like in the 80s or what was the original running boom? Was that 70s or 80s?
You're asking the wrong guy.
You'd know better than me.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'm not even going to comment. Some of our listeners will be like, "You're an idiot. You don't know."
Yeah, but like from what like because I watched a few documentaries on it, and it just seems like everyone was running.
Yeah.
You know, when kind of like I don't know, maybe it's when like tennis shoes became really popular or something like that, and you know you could get some flash shoes and you know get fit, and everyone was doing it.
Yeah, well, the amount of events now, like events used to be run by the clubs or the national association. So here, Athletics New Zealand had cross country season, road season, track season. That's what you did. But now, like, you don't even think about doing those events. You got all these trail events and these road ones, marathons, half marathons, 10Ks, fun runs. It's like just endless amounts of opportunity to do stuff. And then with the trail stuff, people aren't as concerned about their time, whereas if you're doing stuff on the road, especially on the track, it's all about time. Like, it's not like, how fun did you find that? How enjoyable was that for you? It was like, what's your time? Where'd you come? And people just are over that. We've got busy lives now. We don't have time to fuss over that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I guess it's pretty cool if you do like 1 or 2 trail running events a year. It could be the same distance, and just due to the terrain, it could take you like vastly different times.
Yeah.
To complete it. So like comparing one event to the other, you can't really do that.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So you can do one, and it can be a fast course, and you could do really horribly, but you could have the same time as an event where you did really good. So when you talk about time, it's like, well, who cares? I had fun.
Yeah. It's still sort of like, so I was just trying to enjoy myself at this race, and I came fourth, which hurt a little bit. And then I got beaten. Like, I'm a reasonable runner. I ran a 1:27 on reasonably tough trails. And the guy who won, this young guy, he must have been like, I don't know, 20 or something, ran a 1:19. Got beaten by 8 minutes. I was like,
Wow.
I know I'm not like trying my hardest, but there's a lot. It did hurt the pride a little bit. Like,
Well, maybe
thought I would have been a bit closer.
yeah, maybe he took a shortcut like you usually do.
I ran longer last time.
Oh, right, a long cut.
Yeah,
You thought it was a shortcut.
Yeah. No, I didn't. This is endless. I'm getting this at the trail running club as well.
Yeah.
People
Wow.
are like, oh, did you go the right way? Like, thank you. Yes, I did.
Well, it's a good incentive to follow the course marking. That's pretty good.
I studied the map extra hard before the race this time.
That's good. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. But that was fun. And then heaps of people there, like my wife was doing it, and a whole bunch of friends. So it was cool. Good get together.
Cool.
And everything. Yeah, great day. So that was pretty much it. First aid course and a half marathon.
Yeah, cool. Sounds pretty good.
And I'm doing it, Matt, because I'm building up for an ultra endurance run.
Okay. When's that?
When?
Yeah.
September.
How much
15th.
time do you got? Okay, so you got some time.
Yeah, it's creeping up. I really need to get some longer runs in. It must be about 10 weeks now, I think.
Yeah.
So
well, you can do a lot in 10 weeks.
You can, yeah. And I'm finally getting up to, I was just under 100 Ks last week. So it's sort of still building up, feeling good. So I'll just keep progressing over the next sort of couple weeks. Then I'll have a recovery week. Then I'll give myself 4 weeks of like really hard stuff before a 2-week taper.
Cool.
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought was really cool is one of your latest Instagram posts where you talked about your training up to one of your more recent races just before you took a break. And you were saying how, you wondered if you'd ever run again.
Yeah.
Because you had gotten yourself to this point where you're like, I don't know if I want to do it. I thought that was a really cool post. that you were really open about that. But and I can empathize with that kind of way of thinking where you're like, I don't think I ever want to do this again. But then you have a break and you're like, oh yeah, this is sweet. I love this. And that happens with athletes all the time. Like,
Yeah, and it was different to, you do an event that's just ridiculously hard, and you're like, I'm not doing that again. That's stupid. It was more the training. I was like, I don't want to look at my running shoes. I don't want to do anything associated with running. I was just so over it. And then I had a week, and I was like, wasn't even interested. And then that's when I started to get worried. I was like, man, am I done? Like, is that me? Because you have that as a junior, like through when I went to university and stopped playing rugby, I was just done on it. I just was not even interested. But I think we have those,
Yeah.
you're like, oh. So yeah, I put that out there. People generally like to hear that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they love to hear like bad things about you, But then you take a positive spin and like, oh, damn, Will. Okay, that's cool. Like I was just about to love this negative post, but you took this positive spin.
Just a thumbs up.
Yeah. But it's good to be honest, and like I think every athlete goes through that. Like every athlete that I've worked with, there's peaks and valleys, for sure, because training's hard, and sometimes events don't go the way you want them to go. But then having a break, that's why as coaches, we always schedule in a nice break, and that helps to rejuvenate not just the body but the mind as well.
Yeah, and ideally it's proactive rather than reactive. My mind is a bit reactive. Ideally, you'd build up for this big event, smash it, and then you just want to keep going. You're like, perfect. Now, gonna completely hold you back. Nothing.
Yep.
You're like, oh, I just want to do it. It's like, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the ideal. But
yeah. Athletes hate that though. Like, especially, one of my athletes last year leading into the World Championships, we had him take a break, like a pretty big break, because you're working so hard all this time. And then you go to the event and you're super stoked, and you get back and you're still super stoked, and you just want to keep training. But it's such a, like, if you're planning ahead, it's such a great time for a break, because like you're still super amped. Maybe your next few goals are a really long time away. So like to get back straight into the training, it's just unsustainable. And I remember him like kind of questioning. He's like, why am I having a break? I feel amazing.
Yeah.
Well, you need to think long term. And if you don't have a break now, when are you going to have it? You're going to wait until you totally hate it? And yeah, things have worked out. So
yeah, that can be the thing. Like if you're able to spread out the calendar, I generally like to have a year calendar, but like when are you going to get it? The opportunity you have 2-3 weeks, especially when we start dealing with things like world champs, and as we're Southern Hemisphere athletes, like they're going to be in our off season and all this kind of stuff. It just gets ridiculous. And if you're super competitive, there's qualifying races, there's like national champs, there's the big ones, and it's like, where do you go from there?
I think for New Zealanders, it's especially tough because, or anyone in the Southern Hemisphere, because the summer season is opposite to, the international season pretty much. So you can train all winter in, say, New Zealand, and it's going to be crap weather in a lot of places. And then you go to the World Championships, and that's your big event or something like that. And then you come back and the weather starts to be super awesome. And that's when all your friends start to get really motivated as well. And it's just like, why am I taking a break now? This is the worst time for me to take a break. And I think a lot of Southern Hemisphere athletes get really stuck in that because they come back from the huge goal and they just get straight back into the swing of things when everyone else is super amped. And it's easy to feed off just that for a while, but it's not sustainable.
Yeah, it also doesn't help in terms of the elite athletes. that we have a lot of our selection national champs races in, say, February, March. So you got to peak for that, especially if they're key selection races for the world champs teams. And you're like, cool, I peaked. And it's like, all right, now kick into like a 4 month long European or American season. It's tough. But anyway, Matthew, we need to talk about our topic of ultra endurance. How would you define ultra endurance?
Yeah. I guess when I was in the heat of things and like really doing a lot of these events, I would have thought, something over like 6 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
6 to 24 hours. But really, I think the definition is probably something closer to 4, isn't it?
Yeah. So my thesis, the key study in my thesis was termed ultra endurance, and that in the literature it appears to be around 4 hours. And obviously, when you're in the ultra endurance scene, those sort of times become like, you get skewed. Like, oh, 4 hours, yeah, easy. 5 hours, no worries. I can do that in a weekend. So I think for the terms of this discussion, we'll go 10 hours plus.
Yeah.
Around that, and for that reason, that training starts to look a little different. You can definitely go for 5 hours. You can train to race that at your potential. But then when you start looking at 10 hours, 15, 20, there starts to be a lot of different things going on in terms of your physiology and pacing in the race in itself.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's what I think about, now is those, super long events. And, 4 hours, like for someone, they can train to do a marathon and still do a marathon, and it could take them 4 hours. But I don't think anyone would really consider a marathon to be ultra endurance. So that's why I always start to think about things that are longer.
Yeah, and
sure.
for 4 hours for a marathon, just under 4 hours or around that, like, it's a really good time, and you're definitely training and you're definitely running. Like, there's no aspect of it where you're thinking, okay, how am I going to get through this? How, do I need to walk up the hills and all this kind of stuff? No, for 4 hour marathon, like, you're running.
Or maybe run walk.
You can run walk.
Yeah. I mean, you can run walk to a pretty good time.
Yeah,
in a
you
marathon,
can run
can't
walk
you? You showed us
to a
that.
240. So
yeah,
we'll have to do an episode on that. I'm using the run walk for my ultra coming up.
Cool.
Yeah,
cool.
So it's a flat course. We'll do a topic podcast on that.
Yeah, cool.
Maybe the week before and the week after, and see how it goes.
Yeah. Cool. That sounds good. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your experiences, like your personal experiences doing ultras?
Well, okay, sure. The first one sucked. Oh my God, it was so hard. I was super, super scared. It was a 100K run. Actually, no, it was the Ironman. That sucked as well. Enjoyable. It sucked at the time. So it was the Ironman in 2015. And I'd prepared the best I could. Maybe I was training around 20 hours a week, getting a good amount of training, very specific. But I was trying to finish my thesis, and I was still testing participants. I didn't have those big blocks of time where I could train 30 hours to get in those huge days of training. So I pretty much got off the bike, and so I was around 6 hours, got into the run, and through the first 10Ks, I was like, yeah, this is all right. And then getting into 15Ks, I was like, all right, this is going to be super hard. This is hurting, but I'm still running. And so then we're around 7 hours. Then it just got progressively harder. And then that 8 hour mark was like downhill. I was cramping. It wasn't so much like my fitness had nothing to do with it at that stage in terms of cardiovascular, like aerobic fitness kind of thing. At that stage, it was just, I hadn't exercised over 8 hours before, and I was breaking down. And it was just excruciating. And yeah, I just sort of broke down but got myself to the finish. Like I was coming around there's like, you had to do this loop around the sponsored the hotel. It was in Penticton, so if anyone's done that Ironman, they'll know. And I was like 200 meters from the finish, and I just started cramping up. Like again, I was like, oh, I just want to finish this damn race. Please leave me. So I was just like hunched over this rubbish bin, and they're like, keep going, keep going. It's like, I can't even move. Yeah. And then once I got in and everyone was cheering, and then you stop feeling everything. So that was the Ironman. And then the 100K, which was the year after, in 2016. Yeah. Similar kind of thing. Like I was running through, I was like, all good. Starts getting harder, 75Ks. I'm around 7 hours. And then again, I just start breaking down. My body just starts breaking down. And yeah, that's the initial part of it, I guess. Was your but these are 10 hours. These are like Ironman 100K kind of thing. Now these are fast times for sure. I think most people the average is more like 15 hours. But so you've done more stuff up towards that time range, right? What's your stories?
Yeah, I guess my circle of friends were, and the timing of me getting into mountain biking, like 24-hour races were like king, pretty much. So, if
solo
you weren't
24 hours.
Yeah. 24-hour solo on a mountain bike. So at the time, if you weren't doing a solo event, you were doing it as a team. And across the United States and Canada, and I think they're pretty big in Australia for a really long time. Like the team events is pretty much where everyone got their start, because there's not a huge amount of pressure. Like you go to a 24-hour team event, and like most people quit halfway through, and they start drinking beer and they're waiting for their friends. So it's like super social.
Yeah,
like, great way to spend a weekend. So in terms of barriers to getting into racing, none. You just need some lights and like a decent bike and some friends, and you're in. So during this time, like the late 90s until the mid 2000s, like 24-hour racing was it. And so I did my first 24-hour race. It was actually my first race ever, was a 24-hour mountain bike race.
No,
I did. Yeah. I
You're
did
one of those.
Yeah, well, because all the people that came into the shop that my family owned, they were like gearing up for this 24 hours of Alamuchi, it was called. And I had been riding for about a year at this point. I got into riding a bit late. I was maybe about 15, so that's late compared to a lot of people. And even though my family had a bike shop, but that's a different story. I just wasn't into it until then. And they're like, yeah, come do this event. So me and my friend Alex were like, yeah, sweet, we can do 24 hours. That's easy. So
How old were you?
This would have been 2002. So yeah, it would have been, well, that's going to give away my age. I can't do that. So I was about 15, 16. I was 16. So that was my first ever race.
Who let you do a 24-hour race when you're 16?
Yeah, well, my parents took me, like it wasn't, so here's how it went. Okay. And this is where I got my start. So, I started for our team of, I think we were called Team Spundi or something like that.
Oh, you're in a team. Oh,
Yeah. Me and my friend Alex.
That's all right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I started for our team. It was two of us, and it went pretty bad. And I crashed. It started raining like 5 or 6 hours in, and I crashed on this bridge, and crashed hard, really hard. Like fell like 10 feet down off this bridge because it was wet. And our lights sucked at that time. Lights really sucked. They were like 10-watt halogen bulbs, and the batteries were really heavy. Like you can't see. Like you have no idea what you're doing. And we didn't know how to race, so I went out as hard as I could, and we had quit by about midnight, and we went to sleep. It was horrendous. So after that, I started racing XC, and did pretty good at that. And
that's more at that time around 2.5, 3 hours.
Yeah. So about that time. And then I met this local guy who was pretty much a legend at 24-hour races, and I started training with him. His name was Vegan Rob, and he went to the 24-hour worlds, and he was a nobody, and he got top 10 at his
Yep.
first ever 24-hour race. So he was just legendary, and I just started training a lot with him. And eventually I did some 12-hour races, and then in 2006 I went to the 24-hour World Championships
Oh wow.
in Georgia, and yeah, and then I did some other 24-hour races, and yeah, it was a great time, and I thought it was awesome, and everyone was doing it in my circle, and yeah, it was just really cool. But I did a lot of 12-hour races, so
Okay.
you do a lap for 12 hours because 24-hour races they're really hard, and one of the biggest barriers was lights.
Oh,
So to
okay.
make it through the night, you need a lot of lights, and they're really expensive. So if you do a 12-hour event, um, you don't need as much lighting. So it was a little less of a barrier for me doing it solo. So I
Yeah.
did a lot of them.
Yeah.
No
And
idea what I was doing. Pretty much messed it up every time, but had a few good results.
yeah, cool. Well, we'll get into more of the stories as we talk through training, I guess. Like that's the big one, right? Like, all right, we know it's going to take ages. But then with training, like what's the most important factor? Because it's a different type of endurance. Obviously, it's ultra endurance. Like with endurance events, we're talking pretty much an hour. Like for most people, yeah, you're looking at like half an hour through to like 4 hours, 5 hours, sort of in running circles or triathlon. It's like sprint distance triathlon up to sort of half Ironman. And then you've got like 5K run up to a marathon. That kind of stuff is what most people sort of try and train for and then extrapolate out that training towards a 10 hour, 15 hour, sort of 20 hour. Um, but then you're starting to look at two different sort of factors, right? Like we were talking about it. Is it fitness that's going to get you through? Is it stamina? Is it strength? Is it your mental capacity? Um, like what is it? Well, what were you doing to go for 24 hours?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can't train for 24 hours, right? There's only 24 hours in a day. So if you're training for 24 hours, there were guys doing it. This guy, I forget his name, Cameron something. He was riding for the Gary Fisher team. And yeah, he would do 24-hour races. I remember he had this story, like he had this like saddle sore that was so big, and he stopped mid-ride and like popped it or something like that, and then he had this mad infection. But like you can't do that. That's not sustainable.
No.
So yeah, like since I was training, I was doing more XC events. I was just doing your standard cross country training. And that's pretty much what everyone was doing, because at the time in our regional series, he was like a 7-time world champion of 24-hour races. His name was Chris Etoff. He was racing for Trek. He did our regional XC race series.
Yeah.
And we looked at him, and he was really good at XC. So like regionally, he was the man. He was the man to beat at every race. He was very good nationally as well. So we looked at what he was doing, and he was doing XC races, training for XC, and then doing probably 2 24-hour races every year. That would be national championships and world championships. So we pretty much just mimicked that, because you start to run out of time in the day. You can do
Definitely.
6-hour rides, and we were doing a lot of 6-hour rides. But beyond that, some of my friends were doing 8, 9-hour rides, but you can't do that regularly either.
Yeah.
Yeah, just standard kind of XC training. And some people might think, well, a 6-hour ride is not cross country training, but it, in a way, it kind of is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. But how did that see you through for 24 hours? Like, what do you find the defining factor? Like, in that instance, it sounds like it's just fitness. Like, as long as you're fit enough
Sure.
to be like a top level sort of racer, but not even a top level racer, if you're just able to train for fitness, so you're trying to get fitter at an endurance event, an hour, 2 hours, you can just then go and do 24 hours.
Yeah, and that's the way I see it, actually.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I definitely do. Because so if you think about the critical power concept, I'm not sure. I think we did a podcast on this.
Yeah, you've got one on. We've got
Yeah.
one on power.
Okay. So
Maybe
critical
4
power.
or something.
Yeah. So there's this level of power output that you can maintain pretty much forever, right? And that's your aerobic. I'm forgetting the name right now, but go back to our critical power podcast.
Take your aerobic capacity.
Yeah, yes, that's right. Yeah, so if what you want to, like, as you get fitter, the whole point of getting more fit for any kind of endurance sport is to raise the level of your aerobic fitness.
Yes.
And when you do that, so there's really no arguing that. Like, you need to be pretty good at like going hard, but that's less important than having the most efficient aerobic system. So as you raise this level of aerobic fitness, you're increasing the speed that you can go forever.
Yep.
By definition, mathematically. And it pretty much works out like that. Like, you can't go forever, but it's the theory. So if you think about this level and you get fitter and you raise this level, all you really need to do is keep going. So when I look at it, all you need to keep going is good nutrition and to not quit. So there's a few things in my mind that'll make you quit, and that's discomfort.
Sure.
Like getting chafed. Like, we used to get really, really, really bad chafing. Like,
cool.
in
For that.
places.
That's probably enough.
It's places you don't even think about getting chafing. Like your inner thigh close to your knee. Like, we would get chafing there just from like leaning on our seats and stuff. For cornering. Yeah. And like, you don't get that when you're like doing a 6-hour ride on the road or a 6-hour ride on the mountain bike.
Yeah. And
like, your hands start to hurt. So my hands, like, we had to get like grips that gave us special places for our palms. And like, I still have nerve damage in my fingers from, way back then, where I just totally damaged the nerves in my pointer finger and my thumbs just from holding on to the grips. Right. So there's so much pounding. So it's those kind of discomforts that, you don't need many reasons to quit at 3 a.m. So at 3 a.m. you'd be about 15 hours in and you're super sleepy. You don't need that many reasons to quit or to take a break. And if you take a break, you're obviously not going fast. But it's those discomfort things that you really need to either be mentally prepared for, or at least physically be able to adapt to those. So this is like, we have this disagreement quite often where we talk about, like, I don't think mental capacity is a factor in sport at all. Like, I think, if someone can go hard, it's because they can physically go harder. And I know we disagree on this sometimes.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, because once you get to a certain level, people are almost equally as fit, right? So then, yeah, there is definitely a physical component. Like, if you're someone's running away from me or attacks in the bunch and I can't go, like, that's not really. But then when we get to like near the end and everyone's together and it comes like a sprint finish, or it's within 2 minutes to go, I struggle to think that where this argument came up was at the 2012 Olympics and the female triathlon, and there were the Nicola Spirig and Lisa Norden had a sprint finish, and the commentator said she just wanted it more. Nicola Spirig, who won, and in that sense, she had to have like because you said they both wanted it equally as much, and it was just her physical capacity that got her across the line.
Absolutely. I stand by that 1,000,000%. And it's because, you can't tell me that a professional athlete at the very highest level at the Olympics just doesn't want it bad enough. There's no way. Like, I think for me, like, it's just something, it's really easy to talk about because there's no way to measure it. Like, there's no way to measure.
There is, like, but they've done it in the, so I went to a conference that was all about fatigue, and they've measured the capacity to sprint or output, power or speed or whatever, after a time trial to exhaustion. So this is time trial to exhaustion, right? Where you think in your head, I can no longer go. And then immediately after, they go sprint as hard as you can for 10, 15, 20 seconds. And they can. So because the motivation is called the motivational fatigue theory, where it's not based off your physical capacity, it's based off of your capacity to motivate yourself to go. Like, obviously, if there's different factors on the line, like $1 million versus a $50 petrol voucher, like, you can't tell me the physical, like, you're going to go harder.
Yeah. I mean, if there's $1 million on the line, I don't think one person would want it more than the other as well.
They have to. It just has to. It has to factor into it.
So one of my ways of looking at this is when we think about a VO2 max test, and like you go like a VO2 max test, you're hooked up to all these machines that were measuring your power output and your respiratory gases. It starts pretty easy and it gradually gets harder until you can't go anymore. Everyone hits a limit. No one can go forever because it continues to get harder. And there's a few key indicators that say whether you actually hit a max. So there are some people that they're not fit and they come in and they do a VO2 max test and they don't actually hit any of these factors that indicate that they reached a true max, right?
Yeah.
But they're not athletes and they're not experienced with going harder. So there's, they just don't understand what it feels like to push themselves. So it's a little bit different. But then when we bring in athletes, there are key things that we can measure that say that they went as hard as they could. And one of those is the respiratory exchange ratio. And there is no one that's going to exercise beyond a ridiculous respiratory exchange ratio that shows what exactly they're using for fuel and how they're creating these muscular contractions during the test. And there's no one that's going to cheat that system. It's just not going to happen. They're not going to want like an RER beyond, a 1.1, which is what we use, unless there's a mistake in the test. And that's what I refer to when I think about, like, no one can want it more than you.
But then you can, like, that is the aerobic capacity, your ability to sustain. Like, you've seen the athletes, some of them will get to VO2 max and then just keep going and get harder and harder. Some people will stop, like, almost immediately. Like, there's a capacity to exercise beyond that point. There is.
Yeah.
So then it becomes
capacity.
like mental as to how far beyond that you're willing to go.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I struggled with was when I had chronic fatigue, and people were telling me, like, people that I trusted were telling me that I just need to try harder. And I was easily, maybe not easily influenced, but because I definitely thought for myself, but I'm thinking this, like, wow, maybe there is nothing wrong with me. Maybe I do just need to try harder. And that couldn't have been further from the truth, because I had developed chronic fatigue. So I couldn't just want to be better.
Yeah. But I guess it depends where we're applying our theories.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I'm not saying that, well, I guess I am, in terms of your capacity to get out of bed and go train. Like, that's hugely mental.
Sure.
But where our argument sort of comes into it was around, I mean, you said it yourself, like, there's not many reasons why you need to pull out at hour 15 at 3 a.m.
Yeah. So this is where I think mental capacity is super important, because
you just said there's like there's no reason at all, no capacity, no factor of mental in endurance sport?
Yes. But in ultra endurance sport, is
Here
the
we
huge
go.
factor.
Here
And
we
this
go.
is where the two things are super different to me. Because, you need to get your nutrition dialed, which I never had my nutrition dialed when I was doing these events. I was eating donuts and like drinking Gatorade, and like sometimes I'd even grind up oatmeal and put it in my water bottle with milk. I had no idea what I was doing. So I never had that dialed. But then mentally, like there were times when I just pulled out and I just quit. And I would sometimes even beat. So here's a good example. The fastest guy in our area, he was really good. He was doing World Cups, winning all the regional XC races. And this wasn't the world champion. And we were doing this 12-hour race. And a group of two went away, and they, got away from me. I was sitting in third. And I could see them riding together for about the first 10 hours. Right. And we were passing each other on the same part of the course. So I knew I was doing okay, but they had just gained so much time on me. Then I come around, there's like 2 hours left in the race. And I come around, and this guy that was way faster than me was just, pulled over and said he was quitting because he had mud in his shoes. Right. So mentally, like he was just done. Like he just didn't care anymore. And whereas I was like, well, sweet, like I have a better idea of what I'm doing in these kind of events. So I just, carried on. And so mentally, he just wasn't prepared to do that. And whereas I was. And that was one time where I was mentally stronger than someone. But
yeah, so I don't know why that doesn't extrapolate out to the end of a race or a shorter distance race, where someone's like, nah, this hurts at the limit of what I'm willing to accept on this day and time.
I think the difference is because it's easy to train for a 2-hour event. Like, exactly how it's going to feel because you can do so many of those events.
Yeah.
You can train for that duration. You can, develop the same level of metabolic acidosis in a training session as you can in a 2-hour event. And it's, I think, easy to prepare for physically because we know what to do.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, there must be some sort of duration at which, because there's huge, physical factors. Like if I think about my marathon Rotorua, or both of them, like so, in Hawke's Bay, the 2 weeks after Rotorua, like I ran 250, which for me is like well within my abilities. It wasn't a super hard course. Like I could run that. Right. But I was so fatigued. I ran as hard as I could. Mental engagement or motivation didn't come into it. It was all physical as to the reason I slowed down.
There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, but I think.
But then how much faster could I have gone if it was like, you need to run at this time or something?
Well, if there was $1 million on the line?
Yeah, $1 million?
Yeah.
Like I definitely would have run faster.
So so in the Olympics, there's one winner. And, let's take the marathon, for example. And if you win that, like, you're going to be doing pretty good, right? Like, I don't know what your endorsements will be after that, but, let's just say it's $1 million over a lifetime because you have won the Olympics.
Yeah.
Right? So, in a sense, being able to be mentally stronger in the Olympics on that day is worth $1 million. And I don't know if, second place just didn't want it bad enough.
I see.
So, but yeah, like endurance though, yeah. So from like if I'm out there eating donuts, which is what I was actually doing, like I would go to the 7-Eleven and me and my friends would look at like the nutrition facts and we'd pick.
You'd actually look at the nutrition facts.
Yeah.
Like, this is such a contradiction. You're looking at the nutritional facts of donuts for an endurance race.
Yeah, so it's honey buns actually, and we would pick the one that had the most calories. That's exactly what we were looking for, and we'd like text each other that we found a donut or a honey bun that had more calories than the other one. So I was doing that and drinking Gatorade, and I never like really felt amazing nutritionally. What could I have done better, do you think? If I just told you that I'm an athlete coming to you, telling you that that's what I do in my events, what could I change?
What could you change?
Yeah.
The main thing to change in that instance is the loading of calories on your gut. So you go back to the episode we did on carbohydrate intake, Dr. Will's 5 W's for carbohydrate intake, and my drip feed method. Like, you can only absorb so much at one point in time, and this is especially true when you're exercising. Blood's diverted away from your gastrointestinal tract, like your digestive system, because there's no need for us to have like eat food and exercise. It doesn't make any sense. So we need something that's super digestible, like very easy on our gut, and it needs to be in small quantities at a time. And this sort of differs as to how hard you're going. Like, if you're going to chill out for 10 minutes, you could probably digest a bit more. Maybe like part of a donut, but a whole donut while you're still trying to exercise, and a hugely dense one, like with fat and the salt and the sugar and maltodextrin and the glazing and
Yeah, that's
sprinkles.
exactly what we wanted. And the yummy.
Yeah. And potentially like the mineral side of things. Like, there's nothing nutritious there. Like, you're getting rid of everything really. Like, you're sweating, you're obviously breathing heavily for a really long period of time, so you're breathing off like a lot of water and some sort of other, I guess, mineral stuff, mainly through the sweat, excretion. Like, you're getting rid. You need to replace that stuff, and I'm not sure of the nutritional sort of micronutrient breakdown of honey buns, but I'm guessing they're not ticking all the boxes.
No, they weren't. No, but maybe what I did better is one time I had a burrito. I got a burrito in the feed zone from Taco Bell, and that was amazing.
And cycling is going to be, or cycling or mountain biking, like, it's going to be a lot easier to digest, because like when we're talking about running, so 100k, 100 miles, if you're trying to eat a burrito and then essentially just jiggle your stomach nonstop, oh man, you're gonna have some real troubles.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't, but that's something you need to test for sure. If you can eat a burrito and it is like it's just got all the stuff that you need in it and it is digestible, because you don't want to be eating a whole bunch of fiber or non-digestible carbohydrate, because then you're like, now you're going to have to get rid of that, because you can't absorb it, you can't use it for fuel, it's just sitting in your gut, and it's going to be absorbing fluid. So those kind of things are important to look at. And
so
again,
would you lean then more towards liquid calories?
I would, yeah. Obviously, you can't exercise for 10 plus hours purely on liquids. Like, you can, but you shouldn't. You should, just through the satiation and your body's demands for solid food and the habitual nature of like humans in general, like, we eat food. Like, if most people are going to get up, eat breakfast, eat lunch, eat dinner, maybe have some snacks. Like, so if you then go, okay, now I'm not only going to just not do my day-to-day, like sleeping and sitting, I'm going to exercise for 24 hours and not eat any solid food. There becomes a point at which your physiology goes, what the hell is going on? Look, like, if there's a period where you're normally asleep,
circadian rhythms.
There's things that shut down for certain reasons. Like, if you are a normal sleeper, you go to bed at you're an endurance athlete, so say 7:30, No.
Not you, normal people.
Oh, okay. No, so 10 p.m., 10 or 11.
Whoa,
What?
11. That's crazy. No
Yeah, that
way.
is crazy, but some people maybe. And you wake up at like 6 or 7, right? Like that happens. There is very, very, very few times in the history of like your life where you haven't done that. So your body, that's something it just relies on. Like, hey, between now and now, like if you have a fancy Garmin like my one,
Ooh.
and you set your sleep and wake times, like it just knows. It's like, yeah, default. You're going to be asleep here. That's just going to happen. Like between this time and this time, you're going to be sleeping, so I can afford to run some errands, fix some muscles, like divert some blood flow, readjust melatonin, various hormones. Whereas when you're exercising during this period of time, it's like, and you're trying to eat, oh man,
Yeah. Yeah, so
crazy.
that circadian rhythm thing, that's one of the things that we found. I guess we didn't understand what was happening at the time, but we knew that 3 a.m. was going to be your most likely time to quit. Like you can stay up, like if I go to bed at, 9:30 or whatever, usually I can stay up until midnight if I have to. Like, I can do that. But to stay up beyond that is really a stretch. So for me to be exercising and to stay up until 3 a.m., it's like my body like has already gone through, a number of different cycles before 3 a.m. normally. So I get to that, say I'm racing or I'm, just have to stay up because I'm traveling or something. That your body just wants to shut down because it's
And
used to
this
shutting
is,
down.
you got to remember, people are, when they've done these overnight training sessions or late night or whatever, like within the race, you've exercised this whole time. So it's not like you've gone to work and done what you need to do or chilled out in preparation for a 10 p.m. or a midnight start for a 3 hour whatever. It's like, no, that whole time you've just been screwing yourself over physically, and now you have to stay awake and enter into a different cycle. There's just so many physiological and biochemical factors that are coming into account, that I guess you can't really train for unless you altered like your whole circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
So you do need. So the best thing you can do, and this is why I found it interesting. You said you just train like an XC race, like normal endurance race, because like you have to test that. You have to see what happens. I was talking with an athlete, and she was saying how she just got so cold, like ridiculously cold. There's just, and part of the circadian rhythm is your body temperature cools to help you sleep. All of these things will happen. All of these things will go, you need to be asleep. Do you remember the last 20 years, 30 years of your life? You sleep at nighttime. Stop exercising.
Yeah.
And if you're not prepared for that, it comes into the mental side of things. There's also the physical side of it. You're not going to be able to, well, not that you're not going to be able to, but your performance is going to severely be reduced.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we used to, I'd say prepare, in that I did, at that time, I would do most of my training at nighttime. So I would, start riding at maybe 7 or 8 sometimes. And, we'd ride until 11 during the week.
Yeah.
And that was most of my, rides would be like that. So in that sense, I was a little bit prepared, and that was mostly, you get really good at riding at night, and we had better lights by then, and we could actually do it. But yeah, in terms of other preparedness, no, that I just kind of felt like there's nothing really that can prepare you that's not going to screw you over, because once I started to understand what was happening to my body, the more of these events that I did in conjunction with XC races, the more I understood that my body was pretty much just shutting down on me. And that's when I started to develop chronic fatigue. So when I was doing like training for XC, doing a lot of XC, and then also doing these long events, and obviously doing way too many hard efforts.
We talked about that in the overtraining
Yeah,
episode
yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. But when we get to the event, like I've been looking, I want to run 100 miles. I'm not gonna rush out and do it immediately, but I've been looking at it and I'm like, how can I avoid slowing down? Right, the slowdown or the decay in physical performance like is inevitable. It's not like that 4-hour marathon, 5-hour half Ironman, 6-hour kind of thing where you can build into it and negative split it. It's sort of on that cusp of like, yeah, if I go really easy, I should be able to get faster and faster and finish super strong. Because no one's going to be able to run or ride for 15 hours and then go, all right, I'll pick it up now.
Yeah.
Like there may be the odd handful of them, very, very few, but that'd have to be probably the very top end of the sport. Yeah, like, and this made me think about the pacing strategy side of things. It's like, okay, so you got that critical power, that aerobic capacity limit. All right, so you can run or ride, we'll consider power for running as well, at 300 watts, and that's your limit. Mathematically, you can do that forever. The only thing that's going to slow you down is one, your motivation, and two, like just the breakdown of your muscles. So, but then if you're thinking like, oh, I'm doing, an ultra, super ultra, I need to just set out below that so that I'm not like pushing the limit and potentially going to break down too early. How far below that do you go? Because you're going to break down anyway. Whether you go just above it, you'll probably break down earlier. If you go below it, maybe you'll break down later. If you go way below it, are you going to break down at the same point as just below it or on it? This is something that was like, it still is really intriguing me as to how to do that.
Yeah. I don't know what the answer is there.
Did you have Power Meter? Did you look at it?
No, they didn't. Maybe they started to exist. Maybe 2007 was the first mountain bike power meter. No one had any idea what to do. Most people still don't know now. No, we just had no idea. And it was especially hard because the races used to start with a Le Mans start where you like run like a mile to your bike. So that's how they start. Yeah, it was the dumbest thing ever, and I would never run. So I'd be breaking down muscle and in an anaerobic state from the gun. So it just wasn't ideal. And, we didn't understand pacing. I think even some of the top guys didn't have actually, I guess they did have a pretty good handle, but everyone just would slow down. And especially in something like 24-hour mountain biking, where nighttime, it's dark and your lights they're pretty good and you can really see. But in terms of pacing, I think everyone would just try and avoid blowing up. But then when I think about the critical power, had we known this, if we just stay below our critical power, that's as good as we can do, because we can maintain our critical power forever.
Yeah, and until you get that data, like now we have running power, which is super important. And Matt, there's a new Stride coming out.
Whoa!
Can't wait to get my hands on it. Buy. Like I want it.
Oh, cool.
It's supposed to take into account air, wind. Anyway, we have power now because so I go through looking at the 100 miler I'll probably do would be the Tarawera one locally here in Rotorua. I know the trails, I can train on it, everything like that. And so I went back through the past results, right? And you don't really know, like, because I don't know the people and they're not wearing power meters, because I went on their Stravas, had a look, how did they pace it? Like, are you slowing down or are you speeding up? Or are you doing the same? And it's running. So, and same, it would be like looking at speed on a mountain bike. Like, I know around the Blue Lake, it's really like undulating. Well, it's trail running. Everything's undulating. So I don't know if they are running, they're actually running like as hard as they can, or are they walking, or because it's only K splits, I don't have an instantaneous. But if you had an overall power trend, you could see actually, although they are walking at super steep at that kilometer 121, and they are outputting 280 watts. And it's not until, because then once you find that decay, you can go, okay, if you're going to hold 280, you're probably better to start at 280, even though your threshold's 300.
Yeah.
But like you said, you can only really train for what you can train for. Like once you have the data and you understand your capacity, then it becomes about, I guess, breaking down the race so you can put the time in when you need to put the time in and chill out when you need to chill out. When I was looking at the results, there's one segment which is super hilly and it comes at around 120 Ks and it's quite a steep hill. And from 20 hours to 24 hours in terms of finishing time for the 100 miler, the times were within like 4 minutes of each other. The finishing time was like a 4-hour difference, but the time on the segment, because it was so steep and so unrunnable, everyone just walked. And regardless if you're the fittest person in the world or just a everyday weekend warrior who's still quite fit, you're probably going to walk at like the same speed. So in that aspect, like there's no point trying harder.
Yeah.
Like, you might as well, like, yeah, you're not going to be walking as fast as someone else, but the speed at which you're going slower is so much smaller.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I think about, especially, in mountain biking, like normally what I have my athletes do when they go to a big race is they do an easy lap of the course just to check it out. And if you look at the time of their easy lap where it was pretty much no effort versus a race pace lap, there's not a huge difference.
Yeah.
Like there'll be a couple minutes, but it's not as big of a difference as it is in their effort. Right? So to do an easy lap, you might lose, say 3 minutes on your race pace or 5 minutes even, but at least you're moving. Whereas if you do a race pace lap, it's totally going to kill you. And you can think about that in an ultra. If you do a race pace, it's really going to just totally screw you. And if you just keep moving at an easy rate, you're going way faster than you would if you were stopped sleeping.
Yeah.
And yeah, and what we saw this kind of happen at the World Championships for 24-hour races. In 2006, there was this Australian guy named Craig Gordon, and he was killing it. Like he came out of nowhere. I don't think anyone expected him, and he, had lapped the world champion by midnight or something like that. He was just absolutely killing it. He came by me, and he was like in his big ring, standing, like holding on to the bar ends, like he just blew, like just killed it. But then, it gets to like 7 a.m. the next day, and it started to be pretty clear that he had overpaced. And what he had done is he had developed this condition. I'm not sure if on the pronunciation, correct me if I'm wrong, rhabdomyolysis. So
let's go with that.
Yeah. So
it's a yeah.
It's a breakdown of basically it's toxic proteins from muscle breakdown in your bloodstream. So his body started to shut down. He already had a massive lead. And it was so close to the finish that he was okay, but he pretty much had to stop about, an hour and a half or 2 hours before the race was actually finished. So he had overpaced and had to pay for it. And he actually, it's a super serious condition. He had to go to the hospital, and I don't even think he was at the awards or anything like that. He had almost died. There was a documentary on it called 24 Solo. But it was just definitely an example of overpacing, but he had made it far enough and pushed beyond what he really should have done. And that it didn't actually cost him the race. He was able to still win. He was carried across the finish line. Yeah. So I think overpacing is way worse than underpacing. So I would always, at this point, knowing what I know now and seeing what others have done, I would always underpace.
Yeah. And I guess if you're only going to do one, it does make it pretty hard to determine. what I found in my second 100K run, because I fell apart in the first one, I was like, I'm fitter, I can afford to go a bit faster, but I'll actually go out at the same speed as I did last time. And I'll try to, that's going to be easier on me for the first 50Ks kind of thing. Then it gets to 75K, and there's like that's sort of the decisive 25K segment in Kinloch and the Taupo Ultra, which I was doing around the headland loop. And then I found I was so motivated and I was mentally like there, and cardiovascularly sort of like I felt fine, and I wanted to push, but I'd fallen apart. Like I was still able. I think I had maybe the fastest split through there. But I couldn't, like, my body wasn't allowing me to run as fast as I wanted to. So then I was like, okay, I need to go out a bit harder at the start. And then last year, so each year I've gone faster and faster, which is good. I got maybe potentially, I think I got the start right, but I think I just got too eager around 50 to 75K. And again, it was like I was only just slightly falling apart. Like, so I had almost the fastest split. I was third. I had almost the fastest split through the 50 to 75K. And so it's like, until you actually do it and try the different aspects, like the different approaches, you won't really know. So in the first instance, if you go slower, like that race where I was able to push hard all the way to the end, and I was closing time, I was finished fourth that year. I was drawing these guys back, and I was really hammering. And that felt a lot better when I was in second last year and got past and had no response. I just had nothing. It was just excruciating. And then it's still 100K run. Like, you're just not going to feel amazing at the end.
Yeah, so maybe that's why these kind of events are so addictive, and there's almost a cult kind of experience and cult following to these kind of events, is because there's so much that you can do right and so much that you can definitely do wrong.
Yeah. It's
and
like
until you try them, you just don't know.
And you can't just, like, it's not like your local park run, your 5K run, or the 10K event where you go, oh, damn, I stuffed that up. I'll go out harder next time. I'll try push through 3 to 4K. Or you just keep trying every weekend. You're like, nailed it. That was it. I need to do that again. Especially if it's the same course. Like, I used to do that quite often with the park run. It'd be a good tester for me. Oh yeah, I'll try this. And then there's always guys that would run around, and I'll try attack them here. And you just keep doing it, and you get better at it within like 2 months. But with these ultra events, you can only do them twice, 3 times a year. So it becomes pretty tough. But then the training, Matt, I don't want to drag this out too long. But the train, like, what are your recommendations for training?
Well, if you're not the world champion at this kind of event, I would just train like you normally train, and then use smart pacing and smart nutrition for an ultra event. You would definitely have to try to get your volume up in a few test kind of training sessions to see what it actually feels like to go, 6-8 hours. And I've definitely done a lot of those training events and, bike packing kind of things just to know what it's going to kind of feel like. But otherwise, there's no way to do more training than you're already doing. So stick with what you know and do an event that you don't understand yet and get better with it over time.
Yeah, the only one I'd add into that is that overnight kind of stuff. Like, if you're going for 24 hours, it's like a definite. You need to test that out. And if you combine that with your super long session, your 8 hour, you start at, like Matt was saying, like 8 p.m., 10 p.m. or something, go through into the morning. Like, you can only do a few of those as well, just because you have a life, I'm guessing. And it's just going to wreck you, absolutely wreck you. You might feel fine the next day, but you just ran when you're supposed to be, or biked when you're supposed to be sleeping. So the coming week will be a bit tough. But yeah, I think I'm of the same opinion. Like it's still fitness, right? Still aerobic capacity to the most part, and then you just need to apply the specifics for what the event is.
Cool.
All right, that's us.
Yeah, that was
enough for
awesome.
today.
That was
Yeah.
a really good one. I think everyone's going to really like that one. There's a lot of good info in there, and just try your pacing strategies.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Matt. Well, before we head off, anything you want to update the listeners on?
No, we'll save that for next time.
All right, Matt. I'll see you next week.